Alright guys, we've made it to the very end and we just have the epilogue left for Hoot. During the following weeks, the Mother Paula's story mushroomed into a full-blown scandal. The missing environmental impact statement made the front page of the Gazette and ultimately proved to be the fatal blow to the Pancake House project. It turned out that through EIS had been complicated and that the company's biologists had documented 3 mated pairs of burrowing owls living on the property. In Florida, the birds were strictly protected as a species of special concern, so their presence on the Mother Paula's site would have created serious legal problems and a personal relations disaster if it had become widely known. Consequently, the environmental impact statement conveniently disappeared from the city's files. The report later turned up in a golf bag owned by Councilman Bruce Grandy, along with an envelope containing approximately $4,500 in cash. Councilman Grandy indignantly denied that the money was a bribe from the Pancake people. Then he rushed out and hired the most expensive defense lawyer in Fort Myers. Meanwhile, Kimberly Lou Dixon quit her TV role as Mother Paula, declaring that she couldn't work for a company that would bury baby owls just to sell a few flapjacks. The climax of her tearful announcement came when she displayed her life membership card at the Audubon Society. A moment captured by the Entertainment Tonight, Inside Hollywood, and People magazine, which also published the picture of Kimberly Lou, Roy, and Beatrice, hand in hand at the owl protest. It was more media attention than Kimberly Lou Dixon had received as the Miss America runner-up, or even as the future star of the Mutant Invaders from Jupiter 7. Roy's mother kept track of the actress's soaring career in the show business columns, where it was reported that she'd signed a deal to appear in the next Adam Sandler movie. By contract, the owl publicity was a nightmare for Mother Paula's All-American Pancake Houses Incorporated, which found itself the subject of an unflattering front-page article in the Wall Street Journal. Immediately, the price of the company's stock began sinking like a stone. After going wacko at the groundbreaking ceremony, Chuck E. Muckle got demoted to the post of the Assistant Junior Vice President. Although he did not go to jail for choking the newspaper reporter, he was forced to take a class called How to Manage Your Anger, which he failed. Soon after, he resigned from the Pancake Company and took a job as a cruise director in Miami. In the end, Mother Paula's had no choice but to abandon its plan to put a restaurant on the corner of East Oriole and Woodbury. There were the nagging headlines about the missing EIS, the embarrassing resignation of Kimberly Lou Dixon, the TV footage of Chuck Muckle throttling Kelly Colfax, and last but not least, those darn owls. Everybody was upset about the owls. NBC and CBS sent film crews to Trace Middle School to meet with the student protesters, as well as with faculty members. Roy lay low, but he later heard from Garrett that Miss Henpin had given an interview in which she praised the kids who took part in the lunchtime protest and claimed she encouraged them to participate. Roy was always amused when grown-ups lied to make themselves look more important. He wasn't watching TV that evening, but his mother burst into report that Tom Brokaw was talking about him and Beatrice on the network news. Mrs. Eberhardt led Roy to the living room just in time to hear the president of Mother Paula's promise to preserve Coconut Cove's property as a permanent sanctuary for burrowing owls and to donate $50,000 to the Nature Conservancy. We wanted to assure all our customers that Mother Paula's remains strongly committed to protecting our environment, he said, and we deeply regret the careless actions of a few former employees and contractors may have put these unique little birds in jeopardy. What a crock, Roy muttered. Roy Andrew Eberhardt. Sorry, Mom, but the guy's not telling the truth. He knew about the owls. They all knew about the owls. Mr. Eberhardt muted the television set. Roy's right, Lizzie. They're just covering their butts." "Well, the important thing is you did it," Roy's mother told him. "The birds are safe from the pancake people. You should feel great about that." "I do," Roy said, "but it wasn't me who saved the owls." Mr. Eberhart came over and put a hand on his son's shoulder. "You got the word out, Roy. Without you, nobody would have known what was happening. Nobody would have showed up to protest the bulldozing." "Yeah, but it started because of Beatrice's stepbrother," Roy said. "He's the one who should have been on Peter Brokaw, or whatever. The whole thing was his idea." "I know, honey," Mrs. Eberhart said. "But he's gone." Roy nodded. "Sure looks that way." Mullet Fingers had less than 48 hours under the same roof with Lana, who spent most of that time on her telephone trying to drum up more TV interviews. Lana had been counting on her son to keep the Leap family in the limelight, which is the last place he wanted to be. With Beatrice's assistance, the boy had snuck out of the house while Lana and Leon were arguing about a new dress that Lana had purchased for $700 in anticipation of wearing it on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Nobody from Oprah's program ever called Lana back, so Leon had demanded that she return the dress and get a full refund. When the Leap shouting reached the same approximate decibel level as the B-52, Beatrice lowered her stepbrother out the bathroom window. Unfortunately, a nosy neighbor had mistaken the escape for a burglary in process and had notified the police. Mullet Fingers only made it 2 blocks before speeding patrol cars surrounded him. Lana had been furious to learn that her son was up to his old runaway tricks. Out of spite, she told the officers that he'd stolen a valuable toe ring from her jewelry box and demanded that he be locked up in a juvenile detention center to teach him a lesson. There, the boy had only lasted 17 hours before breaking out, this time with an unlikely accomplice. Hiding in the laundry basket with his new best friend, Dana Matherson, undoubtedly had no clue that he'd been specially selected to join the jailbreak, that the scrawny blonde kid who knew exactly who he was and knew all the rotten things he'd done to Roy Eberhart. Being of simple mind, Dana probably had thought only of his unexpected good fortune as the laundry basket was loaded into the laundry truck, which was then driven out the gates of the detention center. Even the approaching sirens probably hadn't worried him until the truck braked and the back doors flew open. It was then that the 2 young fugitives leaped from the smelly bundle of dirty clothes and made a run for it. Later, when Roy heard the story from Beatrice, he knew instantly why her stepbrother had chosen Dana Matherson as an escape partner. Mullet Fingers was fleet and slippery, while Dana was sluggish and sore-footed. Still not fully recovered from his encounter with the rat traps. The perfect decoy. That was Dana. Sure enough, the police had easily caught up with the big thug, though he shook off 2 officers before eventually being tackled in handcuffs. By then, Beatrice's stepbrother was a distant blur, a bronze-colored wisp vanishing into a snarled tree line. The police never found him, nor did they search particularly hard. Dana was a prize catch, the one with the rap sheet and the bad attitude. Roy couldn't find Mullet Fingers either. Many times he'd ridden his bicycle to the junkyard and checked JoJo's ice cream truck, but it was always empty. Then, one day, the truck itself vanished, dragged off and pressed into a rusty cube of scrap metal. Beatrice Leap knew where her brother was hiding, but he'd sworn her to secrecy. "Sorry, Tex," she told Roy. "I made a blood promise." So yes, the kid was gone, and Roy knew he'd never see Napoleon Bridger again unless he wanted to be seen. "He'll be all right. He's a survivor," Roy said, for his mother's benefit. "I hope you're right," she said. "But he's so young." "Hey, I've got an idea." Roy's father jangled his car keys. "Let's go for a ride." When the Eberharts arrived at the corner of Woodbury and East Oriole, 2 other vehicles were already parked at the fence gate. One was a squad car and the other was a blue pickup truck. Roy recognized both of them. Officer Delinko had stopped on his way home from the police station, where he received another recommendation from the chief, this time for aiding in the recapture of Dana Matherson. Leroy, Curly Bannett, who was temporarily between jobs, had been driving his wife and his mother-in-law to the outlet mall when he decided to make a brief detour. Like the Everharts, they'd come to see the owls. As dusk fell, they waited in a friendly and uncomplicated silence, though there was plenty they could have talked about. Except for the fence with its fading streamers, the land bore no sign that the Pancake House people had ever been there. Curly's trailer had been towed, the earth-moving machines hauled away, the travelin' Johnnies returned to the toilet rental company, and even the survey stakes were gone, uprooted and carted off with the trash. Gradually the night air with the buzz of crickets, and Roy smiled to himself, remembering the boxful he'd released there. Obviously the owls had plenty of other bugs to eat. Before long a pair of birds popped out of a nearby burrow. They were followed by a wobbly-legged youngster that looked as fragile as a Christmas ornament. In unison, the owls rotated their onion-sized heads to stare at the humans who were staring at them. Roy could only imagine what they were thinking. "I gotta admit," Curly said with a fond grunt, "they're kinda cute." On Saturday, after the Mother Paula scandal had died down, Roy went to watch Beatrice and her friends play a soccer game. It was a sweltering afternoon, but Roy had resigned himself to the fact that there was no change of seasons in South Florida, only a mild variation of summer. And though he missed the crisp Montana autumns, Roy found himself daydreaming less often about the place. Today the sun lit up the green soccer field like a neon carpet, and Roy was happy to peel off his t-shirt and bake. Beatrice scored 3 goals before she noticed him sprawled in the bleachers. When she waved, Roy gave her 2 thumbs up and chuckled, because it was pretty funny. Beatrice the bear waving at Tex, the new kid. The high sun and the streaming heat reminded Roy of another bright afternoon not long ago in a place not so far off. Before the soccer match ended, he grabbed his shirt and slipped away. It was a short ride from the soccer field to the hidden creek. Roy chained his bike to a gnarly old stump and picked his way through the tangled trees. The tide was very high, and only the water-beaten wedge of the Molly Bell's pilot house showed above the waterline. Roy hung his sneakers on a forked limb and swam out the wreck, the warm current nudging him along. With both hands, he grabbed the lip of the pilot house roof and hoisted himself up on the warped bare wood. There was scarcely enough space for a dry perch. Roy lay on his belly, blinked the salt from his eyes, and waited. The quiet wrapped around him like a soft blanket. First he spotted the T-shaped shadow of an osprey crossing the pale green water beneath him. Later came the white heron, gliding low in futile search on the shallow edge to wade. Eventually, the bird lighted halfway up a black mangrove, squawking irritably about the high tides. The elegant company was welcome, but Roy kept his eyes fastened on the creek. The splash of a feeding tarpon upstream put him on alert, and sure enough, the surface of the water began to shake and boil. Within moments, a school of mullet erupted, sleek bars of silver shooting airborne again and again. Atop the pilot house, Roy scooted forward as far as he dared, dangling both arms. The mullet quit jumping, but assembled in a V-shaped squadron that pushed a nervous ripple down the middle of the creek towards Molly Bell. Soon the water beneath him darkened, and Roy could make out the blunt head shaped of individual fish, each swimming frantically for its life. As the school approached the sunken crab boat, it divided as cleanly as if it had been sliced by a saber. Quickly, Roy picked out one fish and, teetering precariously, plunged both hands into the current. For one thrilling moment, he actually felt it in his grasp, as cool and slick and magical as mercury. He squeezed his fingers into fists, but the mullet easily jutted free, leaping once before it rejoined the fleeting school. Roy sat up and gazed at his dripping, empty palms. Impossible, he thought. Nobody could catch one of these. Darn things, bare-handed, not even Beatrice's stepbrother. It must have been a trick, some sort of clever illusion. A noise like a laugh came out of a dense knotted mangroves. Roy assumed it was the heron, but when he looked up he saw the bird had gone. Slowly he rose, shielding his brow from the sun. "That you?" he shouted. "Napoleon Bridger, is that you?" Nothing. Roy waited and waited until the sun dropped low and the creek was draped in shadows. No more laughing sounds came from the trees. Reluctantly, he slid off the Molly Bell and let the falling tide carry him to shore. Robotically, he got into his clothes, though when he reached for his shoes, he saw that only one was hanging from the forked bow. His right sneaker was missing. Roy put on the left sneaker and went hopping in search of the other. He soon found it half submerged in the shallows beneath the branches, where he figured it might have fallen. Yet, when he bent to pick up the shoe, it wouldn't come loose. The laces had been securely entwined around a barnacle-encrusted root. Roy's fingers trembled as he undid the precisely tied clove-hitch knots. He lifted the soggy sneaker and peeked inside. There he spied a mullet no larger than a man's index finger, flipping and splashing to protest its captivity. Roy emptied the baby fish into his hand and waded deeper into the creek. Gently, he placed the mullet into the water, where it flashed once and vanished like a spark. Roy stood motionless, listening intently, but all he heard was the hum of mosquitoes and the low whisper of the tide. The running boy was already gone. As Roy laced on the other sneaker, he laughed to himself. So the great bare-handed mullet grab wasn't a trick. It wasn't impossible after all. Guess I'll have to come back another day and try again, Roy thought. That's what a real Florida boy would do.